In the SEALs, the first rule they teach you is that the battlefield is always unpredictable. You train for chaos, learn to adapt, and accept that the mission can change in a second. But no amount of training could have prepared me for the video I saw when I finally got back online after 3 months of total radio silence. It was a grainy, shaky clip from a cell phone, and you could hear cruel laughter in the background. It showed a group of wannabe gangsters beating up an old man in his own home, trying to get famous online. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, is that the old man they left broken and bleeding was my father. They were about to learn that some battlefields aren't overseas. Sometimes the most dangerous war is the one you bring right to someone's front door. My name is Jack Vance, and for the last 20 years, I've been a United States Navy SEAL. I've operated in places you've never heard of and done things I can never talk about. My world is all about precision, discipline, and consequence. But through all the violence and chaos, the one true north on my compass has always been my father, Arthur Vance. He's 82 years old, a decorated hero from a forgotten war, and the quietest, most humble man I've ever known. While I was halfway around the world, a group of thugs calling themselves the Road Vipers decided he should be the star of their sick little video. They thought they were attacking a frail, forgotten old man. They had no idea they were declaring war on me. This is the story of how I used every skill the Navy taught me, not to fight a war for my country, but to deliver a very personal, very precise, and very permanent kind of justice. The setup. My father, Arthur Vance, is the kind of man you feel like America itself carved out of the landscape. He was born during the Depression, raised on hardship and hope, and came of age when duty was a word that meant something. He served 2 tours in a jungle halfway across the world, a place that took the youth from his eyes, but never touched the kindness in his soul. He came home with a limp, a chest full of medals he never wore, and a deep silence about what he'd seen. The Purple Heart he earned sat in a dusty box in his sock drawer, not because he was ashamed, but because he believed the real honor was just making it home at all. He settled in the same small town where he grew up, a place of rolling hills and quiet main streets. He married my mother, built their house with his own 2 hands, and worked at the local lumber mill for 40 years. His life was one of quiet dignity. His days were simple and ordered. He'd wake before the sun, drink his coffee black on the porch overlooking the garden my mom had planted, and read the newspaper cover to cover. He was a fixture in our community, the old man who could fix any lawnmower, who always had a crisp dollar for the kids selling lemonade, the one who shoveled his neighbors' driveways in the winter without ever being asked. His home was his sanctuary. It smelled of old books, pipe tobacco, and my mother's lavender potpourri, a ghost of the life they built together. After she passed, the house got quieter, but my father's routine held firm. It was his anchor. The garden became his main project. Tending to her roses was his way of keeping her memory alive. He'd spent hours out there, his old knees creaking, his gnarled hands gently pruning and weeding. He was at peace there. Our relationship was built on that same quiet respect. As his only child, he was my hero from the moment I could walk. He never pushed me toward any one path, but when I told him at 18 I was joining the Navy, I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes, not just pride. We weren't a family that said a lot. We showed love through actions, a firm handshake, a shared silence on the porch, a look that said everything. My career took me far away. Deployments were long and communication was rare. There were months-long stretches where he wouldn't hear from me, and he never once complained. He understood the work. He'd just keep a light on in the front window, a silent beacon to guide me home. He'd write letters on yellow legal pads telling me about the town, the garden, his old army buddies. I'd read them in the belly of a C-130 or in a dusty tent thousands of miles from home, and for a few minutes I'd be there.
He was my connection to a world of peace and simplicity, a world I fought to protect but could rarely live in. He was self-reliant, almost to a fault. At 82, he still refused to have a home care nurse. "I can manage my own affairs, Jack," he'd say, his voice firm. It was a matter of pride, of holding on to his independence. He was a rock, an unshakable pillar of strength and decency in a world that seemed to have less and less of both. That was the man the road vipers chose as their victim. That was the life they decided to shatter for a few pathetic minutes of internet fame. They saw a quiet old man living alone. I saw the man who taught me everything about honor, courage, and the quiet steel of true strength. The betrayal. The road vipers weren't real biker gangs. They were a sad imitation, a crew of local losers in their late 20s and early 30s who thought leather jackets made them dangerous. Their leader was a guy named Rick "Spike" Miller, a classic bully whose size was the only thing he had going for him. He was big, loud, and a sneering arrogance he mistook for confidence. His life was just a string of failed jobs and petty crimes, always blaming the world for his problems. His followers were just as pathetic, a scrawny tech wannabe named Kevin "Glitch" Peterson, who ran their social media, a pair of beefy but brainless brothers, Mark and Dave "the Hammers" Johnson, who were the muscle, and a younger, impressionable kid named Timmy "Pup" Jenkins, desperate for their approval. Their goal wasn't territory or running a criminal empire, it was clout. They were addicted to online attention, chasing the cheap validation of views and likes. They had a small, toxic following on some fringe video site where they'd post videos of themselves trying to act tough, harassing waitresses, starting fights in bars, and doing stupid motorcycle stunts. They were hunting for that one viral moment, and they decided cruelty was the fastest way to get there. They found my father on a Tuesday afternoon. He was in his front yard, kneeling in the rose garden with his back to the street. To them, he was the perfect target, old, alone, vulnerable. He was just a prop for their next video. Spike, with Glitch filming, swaggered right onto the lawn. "Hey, old man, nice flowers. A little fruity for a guy your age, don't you think?" My father looked up, shielding his eyes. He didn't respond with fear or anger, just a tired curiosity. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" he asked, his voice calm. That politeness, that lack of fear just seemed to make Spike mad. He was looking for a reaction, for terror, and my father wasn't giving it to him. "Yeah, you can help us," Spike sneered, getting closer until his shadow fell over my father. "We're making a little film here. What do you think, Glitch? Respect your elders?" Glitch giggled from behind the phone. "Or maybe, don't. That's way more edgy, boss." They circled him like vultures. My father slowly got to his feet, a hand on his lower back. His limp was worse than usual. "I think you boys should be on your way," he said. His tone was still even, but now there was a hard edge to it. That's when they crossed the line. Spike shoved him. It wasn't a hard shove, but for an 82-year-old man, it was enough. My father stumbled back, tripped over the garden hose, and fell hard onto the grass. There was a sickening thud as his hip hit the ground, and a sharp gasp of pain escaped his lips. That was the shot they wanted. Glitch zoomed in on my father's face, twisted in pain. The Hammers laughed, a hollow, brutish sound. Pup, the youngest one, looked uneasy for a second, but a sharp glance from Spike made him force a smile. "Not so tough now, are you, Grandpa?" Spike taunted, kicking dirt from the rosebed on my father's chest. "Where's all that greatest generation crap now?" But they didn't stop there. They went into his house. The front door was unlocked. It always was in his trusting world. Glitch kept filming as they trashed the living room, not to steal anything, but just to humiliate him. They knocked over a lamp. They pulled books off the shelves. And then they found the small, ornate wooden box on the mantelpiece. It held my mother's ashes. Spike held it up to the camera. "What's in here, old man? Your secret fortune?" He shook it, and the lid popped off. The ashes, the last physical remnant of the love of my father's life, spilled onto the floor, mixing with the dirt from their boots. Through the window, they could see my father struggling to get up. Spike laughed, a sound completely devoid of humanity. "Clean up on aisle 3, he yelled, before dropping the empty box, and then, as a final insult, he walked over to the wall where my father kept his military memorabilia, a framed photo of his unit, a commendation letter, a flag folded into a triangle. He spit on the glass of the photograph. They left him there, on the ground in his own yard, his home violated, and his wife's ashes scattered on the floor. They ran back to their bikes, hooting and hollering, high on what they thought was power. Glitch was already editing the video, adding some stupid thumping rock music and a title, "Road Vipers Teach Old Man a Lesson." They uploaded it before they even reached the end of the street. They had their viral video. They had no idea what they had really just done.
The suffering. A neighbor found my father an hour later, still lying in the yard, unable to get up. The fall had fractured his hip. An ambulance came and the local police took a report, but the real damage was already done. The physical pain was bad, but it was nothing compared to the wound to his spirit. My father, a man who had faced enemy soldiers, buried friends, and lived a life of unwavering integrity, was humiliated. He felt shame. It was a poison that seeped into him, far worse than any physical injury. When the neighbor, Mrs. Gable, finally got a hold of me, she was hesitant. She knew I was deployed. "Jack, it's about your father," she started, her voice trembling. "There was an incident." But I was off-grid, in a place where phone calls don't get through. For weeks, my father suffered alone. He was in the hospital, then a rehab facility. He refused to talk about what happened, especially the part about my mother's ashes. He didn't want to be a burden. He didn't want his son, the Navy SEAL, to worry about him. He just retreated into himself, and the light in his eyes grew a little dimmer each day. Meanwhile, the Road Vipers were basking in their 15 minutes of infamy. The video didn't go mainstream, it was too senselessly cruel for that. But in the dark corners of the internet where they lurked, it was a hit. It got tens of thousands of views. The comments were a horrifying scroll of encouragement. "LOL, owned that boomer," one said. "Show him what time it is," said another. Spike and his crew were local celebrities to the dregs of society. They'd walk into bars and people would actually cheer for them. They felt like kings. Glitch posted screenshots of the view count, bragging about their success. Spike even made a follow-up video, sitting on his bike, gloating. "Yeah, we heard the old-timer took a little fall," he smirked. "Maybe next time he'll learn to show some respect. The Road Vipers don't play." 3 months after the attack, my mission ended. We were helicoptered out to a forward operating base, and for the first time in 92 days, I had a satellite connection. My phone blew up with notifications, emails, old news alerts, and a string of frantic messages from Mrs. Gable. The last one had a link. I was sitting on my cot, still covered in dust, my rifle leaning against the wall. I clicked the link, and my world went silent. The video was only 2 minutes long, but it felt like an eternity. I watched them mock him. I watched them shove him. I watched him fall. I saw the pure agony on his face. I saw them go into his house, my house. I saw Spike hold up the box with my mother's ashes, and I saw him spill them on the floor. I saw him spit on my father's unit photo. A coldness started in my chest and spread through my entire body. It was a familiar feeling, a state I learned to access before a mission, the total suppression of emotion, replaced by a singular, icy focus. But this wasn't professional, this was primal. The men in that video were laughing. They thought it was a joke. I watched it again and again, 10 times. I memorized their faces, their voices, their stupid, satisfied smirks. The scrawny one with the phone, the 2 hulking idiots laughing, the young one looking nervous, and him, Spike, the leader, the one who spat on the flag. My commanding officer found me an hour later, still sitting in the same spot, staring at the blank screen of my phone. He knew the look in my eyes. He'd seen it before on men who had just lost everything. "Vance,"
he said quietly. "What is it?" I didn't answer. I just stood up, went to the command tent, and filled out the paperwork for immediate emergency leave. 2 hours later, I was on a transport plane heading home. During the 18-hour flight, I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, I just sat in the dark, the images from the video playing on a loop in my head, the laughter, the fall, the ashes. A plan began to form. Not a plan of simple rage and violence, but something colder, more patient, and far more destructive. They wanted to go viral. I was going to make them disappear. The plan/the reveal. The flight home was a blur. When I landed, I didn't go to my apartment. I rented a generic car and drove straight to the rehab center. I found my father in a small, sterile room, staring out the window at a brick wall. He looked smaller. The unbreakable pillar of my life looked frail, his eyes haunted by a shame that didn't belong to him. He turned as I walked in, and for a moment a flicker of the old light returned. "Jack," he whispered. I crossed the room and knelt by his chair. I didn't need to ask. I just said, "I saw the video, Dad." His face crumpled. Tears welled in his eyes, the first I'd seen him cry since my mother's funeral. They spilled her, Jack, all over the floor, and I couldn't do anything." I put my hand on his shoulder. My own voice was steady, almost unnaturally calm. "This is not your fault. This isn't your shame. It's theirs, and I'm going to give it back to them." He looked at me, searching my face. "Don't do anything stupid, son. They're just angry kids. It's not worth throwing your life away." I looked him straight in the eye. "Who said anything about stupid? They wanted to destroy your peace. I'm going to dismantle their entire world. I'm not going to touch them. I won't break a single law. I'm going to use their own lives as a weapon against them and make them wish they'd never been born. And when it's over, they'll know it was you they should have been afraid of." A different kind of training kicked in, not the kind for kicking down doors, but for taking apart networks. For 20 years, I'd been trained to see the world as a system of strengths and weaknesses. Every person, every organization has a center of gravity. Find it, and the whole structure collapses. The Road Vipers were no different. I set up a base in a cheap motel on the edge of town, paid for in cash. My weapons weren't guns, they were encrypted laptops, burner phones, and a satellite internet dish. Phase 1 was intel. It's amazing what people willingly put on the internet. I started with the man who filmed it all, Kevin Glitch Peterson. He was easy. His entire self-worth was online. He used the same username for everything, a rookie mistake. In an hour, I had his full name, his address, his job at a local electronics store, and his entire digital history. I found old forum posts where he bragged about pirating software. I found a poorly secured cloud account filled with more videos, including some that were basically confessions to other petty crimes. Best of all, I found out he was running a small, illegal side business from work, selling unlocked streaming devices using the store's inventory and shipping account. A perfect weak spot. Next, the muscle. The Johnson brothers, Mark and Dave, the Hammers. They were less online, but everyone leaves a trail. Public records were a gold mine. I found that Mark was collecting disability benefits for a supposed debilitating back injury. A little more digging through their friends' social media pages turned up photos of him last month lifting an engine block out of a car and winning a local strongman competition. He wasn't just working a cash job as a bouncer, he was committing felony fraud. Dave was simpler. He had a string of DUIs and was on probation. One more mistake and he'd be facing real jail time. His weakness was his temper and his truck, which he loved more than anything. Then there was the pup, Timmy Jenkins. He was the weak link, the one who looked uncomfortable in the video. His social media was full of angst and a desperate need for approval. He lived with his grandmother and was struggling to pay for community college. He wasn't a true believer, he was a follower, terrified of being kicked out of the group. His weakness wasn't a crime, it was his conscience. Finally, the leader,
Rick Spike Miller. He was more careful, but his arrogance was his downfall. He saw himself as an untouchable alpha male. I learned he was involved in a small-scale chop shop dealing in stolen motorcycle parts. It wasn't a big operation, but it was enough. He ruled his crew through fear and intimidation. The key to dismantling a group built on fear is to introduce a greater fear, paranoia. You make the leader believe his own people have turned on him. I spent 3 days gathering intel, building a profile on each of them. I created a flowchart on the motel room wall, linking their names to their weaknesses. It looked like a mission plan for taking down a terrorist cell. To me, that's exactly what it was. They had terrorized my father. Now I would systematically erase them, one by one, without even laying a hand on them. My revenge wouldn't be a single explosion. It would be a slow, cold, psychological demolition.
The plan went into motion on a Friday night. I started with the easiest target, the one who would create a ripple of fear, Glitch. Since he was so proud of his digital life, I decided to set it on fire. Using the evidence I'd gathered, I drafted a detailed, anonymous email about his illegal side hustle. It didn't look like a random tip. It was formatted like a corporate security report, complete with IP logs, inventory numbers, and shipping records. I sent it to his company's regional manager and the head of loss prevention. By Monday morning, Kevin Peterson would be facing an investigation he couldn't survive. But I didn't stop there. I went after his online identity. I reported his social media accounts for copyright infringement, using the music he'd illegally put in the video of my father. His main accounts were suspended in hours. Then, I went after the Road Vipers channel on that fringe video site. I didn't just report it for copyright, I framed it as a channel promoting targeted violence against the elderly, a violation of their terms of service. Within 48 hours, their entire channel was permanently deleted. All their videos, all their clout, gone. Next, the hammers. For Mark Johnson, the disability fraudster, it was just a matter of anonymous paperwork. I compiled a digital file with the strongman photos, screenshots of him working as a bouncer, and a timeline of his supposed injury versus his activities. I submitted it anonymously to the Social Security Administration's Fraud Division. A government investigation is slow, but it's a steamroller. A ticking time bomb was now placed under his entire financial life. For his brother Dave, on probation, the approach was more direct. I knew he loved his truck and hung out at a specific dive bar. I waited until he was inside, then made another anonymous call to the local police. I reported a truck matching his, license plate and all, for driving erratically, and mentioned the driver might have been drinking. His probation included a zero-tolerance policy. The flashing lights in his rearview mirror as he left the bar was the beginning of the end for him. For Timmy, Pup, Jenkins, the follower, the weapon was guilt. I found his grandmother's email address. I sent her a message from a masked account, pretending to be a concerned neighbor. "Ma'am," I wrote, "I don't know if you're aware of a video your grandson Timmy is in, but it involves the assault of an elderly war hero. I know you raised him better than this. The man's name is Arthur Vance." I attached a link to the original video I had saved. A grandmother seeing her grandson complicit in that would be more powerful than any police officer. His one source of stability, his home life, would become a place of shame. Finally, it was Spike's turn. For him, the attack had to be psychological. He ruled by fear, so I made him the victim of it. Using burner phones, I started sowing paranoia. I sent a text to one of his chop shop buddies from a spoofed number. "Spike's getting sloppy, talking too much, watch your back." Then I sent a text from Spike from a different number. "Your boys are talking to the cops. They're gonna roll on you to save themselves."
The masterstroke was using a piece of intel only Spike would know I had. I knew the location of his next illegal parts deal. A few hours before the meet, I called the police and reported a suspicious transaction at that exact spot. A patrol car simply rolling through was enough to spook the buyers. The deal fell apart. To Spike, it was proof that someone in his crew was a snitch. He could only look at the faces around him. His little empire of fear began to eat itself alive. His crew vanished, the money dried up, and he was left alone and paranoid. The climax came 2 weeks after I got back. Spike, broken and desperate, finally put it together. Not how, but who. He knew it all started after they went after the old man. In a final stupid act, he drove to my father's house. My father was home by then, his hip healing. Spike came at night, not to attack, but for answers. A ruined man looking for the source of his ruin. But I was waiting. I had anticipated this. I was sitting on the porch in my father's chair, a cup of coffee in my hands. As he walked onto the lawn, he saw me. He stopped, his face a mix of confusion and dawning horror. "Vance?" he stammered. Who are you?" "I'm the man you made an enemy of," I said, my voice quiet. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. "You came to my father's house. You put your hands on him. You desecrated the memory of my mother, and you filmed it for fun." I took a slow sip of coffee. "Let me give you an update. Kevin Peterson was fired and is being sued. His online life is gone. Mark Johnson is under federal investigation for fraud. His brother Dave is in jail. Timmy got kicked out by his grandmother. Your business is gone. Your associates think you're a snitch, and you are utterly alone." He just stared at me. The bully was gone, replaced with a pathetic, defeated man. "How?" "I am the man you made an enemy of," I said, my voice quiet. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. "You came to my father's house. You put your hands on him. You desecrated the memory of my mother, and you filmed it for fun." I took a slow sip of coffee. "Let me give you an update. Kevin Peterson was fired and is being sued. His online life is gone. Mark Johnson is under federal investigation for fraud. His brother Dave is in jail. Timmy got kicked out by his grandmother. Your business is gone. Your associates think you're a snitch, and you are utterly alone." He just stared at me. The bully was gone, replaced with a pathetic, defeated man. "How?" "I am the man you made an enemy of," I said, my voice quiet. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. "You came to my father's house. You put your hands on him. You desecrated the memory of my mother, and you filmed it for fun." I took a slow sip of coffee. "Let me give you an update. Kevin Peterson was fired and is being sued. His online life is gone. Mark Johnson is under federal investigation for fraud. His brother Dave is in jail. Timmy got kicked out by his grandmother. Your business is gone. Your associates think you're a snitch, and you are utterly alone." He just stared at me. The bully was gone, replaced with a pathetic, defeated man. "How?" "I am the man you made an enemy of," I said, my voice quiet. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. "You came to my father's house. You put your hands on him. You desecrated the memory of my mother, and you filmed it for fun." I took a slow sip of coffee. "Let me give you an update. Kevin Peterson was fired and is being sued. His online life is gone. Mark Johnson is under federal investigation for fraud. His brother Dave is in jail.
Timmy got kicked out by his grandmother. Your business is gone. Your associates think you're a snitch, and you are utterly alone. He just stared at me. The bully was gone, replaced with a pathetic, defeated man. How? I am the man you made an enemy of, I said, my voice quiet. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. You came to my father's house. You put your hands on him. You desecrated the memory of my mother, and you filmed it for fun. I took a slow sip of coffee. Let me give you an update. Kevin Peterson was fired and is being sued. His online life is gone. Mark Johnson is under federal investigation for fraud. His brother Dave is in jail. Timmy got kicked out by his grandmother. Your business is gone. Your associates think you're a snitch, and you are utterly alone. He just stared at me. The bully was gone, replaced with a pathetic, defeated man. How? I am the man you made an enemy of, I said, my voice quiet. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. You came to my father's house. You put your hands on him. You desecrated the memory of my mother, and you filmed it for fun. I took a slow sip of coffee. Let me give you an update. Kevin Peterson was fired and is being sued. His online life is gone. Mark Johnson is under federal investigation for fraud. His brother Dave is in jail. Timmy got kicked out by his grandmother. Your business is gone. Your associates think you're a snitch, and you are utterly alone. He just stared at me. The bully was gone, replaced with a pathetic, defeated man. How? I am the man you made an enemy of.